Welcome to Stamps Old World UK. Today we are diving into the history and incredible market value of one of the most iconic high-value Victorian stamps ever issued. The stamp you see on your screen is the Great Britain 1883 Queen Victoria 10 shilling greenish grey. This stunning piece of philatelic history is a favorite among serious collectors and is often the crown jewel of many specialized British collections. The stamp features the classic profile of Queen Victoria and was part of a series intended for high-value transactions like telegrams and bulk mailings. What makes this specific issue so fascinating to collectors is the variation in paper and watermark. This stamp was printed on both blued paper and white paper with a large anchor watermark. The example we are looking at shows the distinctive corner letters HE and EH, which help experts identify its exact position on the printing plate. When we talk about the market value of this stamp in today's dollars, it is important to understand that condition is everything. A used version of this 10 shilling greenish gray with a clean circular date stamp usually sells for anywhere between $500 and $800, depending on how well the design is centered and the quality of the perforations. If you happen to find one with a rare cancel or an exceptionally fine used condition, the price can easily climb toward $10,000. However, the real excitement happens when we look at mint examples. A mint version of this 10 shilling greenish gray with original gum is a major rarity. In the current market, a high-quality mint example can be valued at over $5,000. If you are lucky enough to find a specimen in pristine, unmounted mint condition with perfect centering, it can reach astronomical prices at auction, sometimes exceeding $100,000 for the rarest paper varieties. Next up, the penny black, the stamp that changed global communication forever. Issued in May 1840, this small piece of black ink and gummed paper was the world's first adhesive postage stamp. While many people believe every penny black is worth a fortune, the reality of the market in 2025 is much more nuanced. Because over 68 million of these stamps were printed, they are not technically rare. However, their historical significance makes them a cornerstone for every serious collector, and their value in US dollars can range from the price of a nice dinner to the cost of a luxury home. When we look at the current market value in 2025, the price of a penny black is determined primarily by its physical condition and its margins. A used penny black with poor margins, perhaps where the scissors cut into the design, or one with a heavy, messy cancellation, typically sells for between $50 and $100. If you find a used specimen with 4 clear, even white margins and a crisp red Maltese cross cancellation, the value jumps significantly. These high-quality used examples are currently trading for anywhere between $300 and $600 on the open market. For collectors looking for the blue-chip investments of philately, mint-condition penny blacks are where the numbers truly escalate. A mint, unused penny black with original gum is a rare find, because most were used for postage as intended. In today's market, a fine, unused example starts at around $3,000, but exceptionally fresh pieces with large margins can easily exceed $10,000. The ultimate prize for many is Plate 11. While most penny blacks were printed from plates 1 through 10, Plate 11 was intended for the penny red. A very small number were printed in black from this plate, and these are incredibly rare. A used Plate 11 can command over $5,000, while a mint version is a 5-figure treasure. Beyond the stamp itself, the cover, or the original envelope it was mailed on, adds a massive premium to the value. A penny black on a clean cover sent during the first week of May 1840 is a historical document. We have seen extraordinary examples, such as those dated May 6th, the very first day of official use, sell at major auctions for over $150,000. Even more recently, rare multiples like blocks of 4 or 6 have reached staggering prices, sometimes fetching over $250,000 at elite auction houses like Sotheby's. Next up, the fascinating world of British philately and the hidden treasures found within old collections. Today we are diving deep into the market for the stamps of King Edward VII, an era that represents some of the most beautiful and complex printings in the history of the Royal Mail. As we move through 2025, the market for these Edwardian issues remains incredibly active, with prices shifting for everything from the common definitive to the rarest experimental printings. Whether you are a seasoned collector or someone who has just inherited a family album, understanding the current value in US dollars is essential for knowing exactly what your collection is worth in today's global market. The King Edward VII era, spanning from 1902 to 1910, is famous for its transition in printing houses and the vast array of color shades that can make a massive difference in valuation. Most collectors are familiar with the standard half-penny green and one-penny red stamps that were printed in the billions, but the real story lies in the specialized shades and the high-value seahorse precursors. In the current market, a standard used set of the low-value definitives might only fetch a few dollars, but if you happen to find specific shades like the aniline pink or the pale gray-green, you are looking at values that can quickly climb into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Condition is the absolute king in 2025, and buyers are willing to pay a significant premium for stamps with original gum, perfect centering, and light, readable cancellations. One of the most talked about stamps in this series is the legendary 2-pence Tyrian plum, which was prepared for issue in 1910 but never officially released to the public following the king's death. This is one of the crown jewels of British philately, and its value in today's market is truly life-changing. If a certified example were to appear at auction today, it would easily command a price upwards of $100,000, depending on its provenance and condition. While most of us will never find a Tyrian plum in a regular bulk mix, it serves as a reminder of why we check every single stamp in our possession. More commonly, the standard 2-pence stamps in green and carmine are worth between $2 and $10 for used copies, while mint, never-hinged examples can reach $40 to $50. Moving up the scale to the high-value issues, the 2 shilling and 6 pence, 5 shilling, and 10 shilling stamps are currently seeing a resurgence in demand among international investors. A fine used 10 shilling ultramarine from the De La Rue printings is currently trading for approximately $150 to $200, while a pristine mint version can easily exceed $1,000. The top of the definitive range is the 1-pound dull blue-green, which remains a dream item for many. In 2025, a high-quality used 1-pound Edward VII stamp is valued at roughly $400 to $600, whereas a perfect mint copy can reach as high as $3,000 in the current economic climate. It is also important to mention the official stamps overprinted for use by government departments such as the Office of Works, the Board of Education, and the Admiralty. These overprints are a specialized field where the values can be exceptionally high due to their limited use and short lifespan. Some of these departmentals are valued at over $5,000 for rare used examples, but you must be extremely cautious of forgeries, as fake overprints have circulated for decades. Always look for certificates of authenticity when dealing with these high-value items. We recommend using a high-powered magnifying glass to check the crispness of the overprint and the specific type of ink used, as these details are what the top appraisers look for when determining a final market price.
Next up, the King George VI 1-penny red stamp. This particular design, often called the definitive issue, served as the workhorse of the British postal system throughout the mid-20th century. First issued in May 1937 following the king's accession, this stamp features a classic profile of the monarch facing left, framed by the elegant symbols of the United Kingdom, the rose of England, the thistle of Scotland, the shamrock of Ireland, and the daffodil of Wales. When we look at the market value of this stamp in today's economy, it is important to distinguish between the common versions and the rare varieties that collectors hunt for. For a standard used copy that has been through the mail and bears a common cancellation mark, the market value is quite modest, typically ranging from $100 to $200. If you have a mint condition version with the original gum intact, the price slightly increases to around $200 or $300 depending on the freshness of the color. However, the real excitement for viewers of Stamps Old World UK comes from the rare errors and specialized varieties. For example, versions of this stamp with a sideways or inverted watermark can command significantly higher prices, often reaching $400 to $500 in fine condition. Even more impressive are the rare dry print errors or imperforated examples, where the stamps were not properly separated by holes. These rare pieces can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars at specialized auctions.
Next up, the King George VI 1.5 penny red-brown definitive stamp. This stamp was part of the first definitive series issued for the King's reign beginning in 1937, and it features the famous portrait of the King by Eric Gill. If you look closely at the design, you can see the beautiful floral emblems in the corners, which represent the different nations of the United Kingdom, including the rose for England, the thistle for Scotland, the daffodil for Wales, and the shamrock for Northern Ireland. This particular stamp was a workhorse of the British Post Office during the late 1930s and throughout the Second World War. Because it was used so frequently for basic letter rates, millions upon millions were printed, which makes it a very common find in many old collections today. However, even common stamps have their own unique stories and market niches. When we talk about the market value of this stamp in today's world, it is important to look at the condition and the specific variations. For a standard used copy, like the one you might find on an old envelope, the market value is generally quite modest, usually ranging from about $25 to $150. These are perfect for collectors who are just starting out, or for those who enjoy the historical aspect of the hobby without needing a huge investment. If you happen to have this stamp in mint, never hinged condition, meaning it has never been used and still has its original gum on the back, the value increases slightly. In today's market, a high-quality mint copy typically sells for between $200 and $500. Collectors often look for well-centered copies with bright colors and sharp perforations to add to their albums. There are also specialized versions to look out for, such as stamps with inverted watermarks or those from specific booklet paints, which can command higher prices, sometimes reaching $450 to $700, depending on the rarity of that specific variety.
Next up, the early 20th century, to explore the elegant and highly collectible era of King Edward VII. Succeeding Queen Victoria in 1901, Edward VII's reign was relatively short, yet it left behind a legacy of some of the most beautiful and sought-after stamps in British history. From common daily definitives to legendary rarities that command thousands of dollars at auction, understanding the market value of these pieces is essential for any serious collector or investor in today's market. When we look at the standard Edwardian issues, most were printed by the famous De La Rue and Company, using the iconic profile of the king based on a portrait by Émile Fuchs. For many collectors, the journey starts with the low-value denominations, like the half-penny green and the one-penny scarlet. In today's market, a common used example of these might only be worth a few cents to $1. However, condition is everything in philately. An unmounted mint specimen with its original gum and perfect centering can easily fetch between $10 and $30. Collectors also keep a sharp eye out for specialized shades and watermarks, as a rare color variation can instantly triple a stamp's value. One of the most talked about stamps of this era is the famous 2-penny Tyrian plum. This stamp was intended for release in 1910, but following the sudden death of King Edward VII, the entire stock was ordered to be destroyed. Only a tiny handful of examples survived, mostly because they were already in the hands of the royal family or high-ranking officials. Today, the Tyrian plum is considered one of the crown jewels of British philately. If you were lucky enough to find one, its market value in today's currency is estimated at over $140,000. It is a true testament to how history and rarity can transform a small piece of paper into a massive financial asset. As we move into the higher denominations, such as the 2 shilling sixpence, the 5 shilling, and the 10 shilling values, the market becomes even more exciting. These stamps were often used for heavy parcels or telegrams, meaning clean, lightly cancelled examples are quite rare. A high-quality 10-shilling ultramarine from the 1902 series can range from $500 to over $1,000, depending on its freshness and the clarity of its postmark. The top-tier 1-pound blue-green stamp is a particular favorite for its regal appearance. In the current market, a fine used copy might cost you around $800, while a pristine mint version can reach upwards of $3,000.
Next up, the most iconic pieces of British philately, the 9-pence violet blue Machen series stamp featuring Queen Elizabeth II. This specific design is part of the legendary Machen series, which was first introduced in 1967 and remained the standard definitive stamp for the United Kingdom for over 5 decades. The portrait itself was sculpted by the artist Arnold Machen, who created a timeless plaster bust of the Queen that captured her profile with incredible elegance and simplicity. In the world of stamp collecting, this minimalist design is celebrated because it removes all the clutter of traditional frames and focuses entirely on the royal effigy and the denomination. The 9-pence blue stamp you see here was a workhorse of the British postal system during the late 20th century. While millions of these stamps were printed and circulated, making them quite common for the average collector, there are specific variations that can significantly change their desirability. Collectors often look for differences in the phosphor bands, which were applied to help mail sorting machines, or variations in the paper and gum types used by different printers, like Harrison & Sons or Quest. Some versions of this 9-pence stamp were printed in slightly different shades of blue or violet, and identifying a rare shade or a printing error, like a color shift, can turn a standard stamp into a valuable treasure. When we talk about the market value in today's world, it is important to manage expectations. For a standard used 9-pence blue Machen stamp that has been canceled by a postmark, the value is typically very modest, usually ranging from 10 cents to 50 cents in United States dollars. If you have a mint condition version that has never been hinged and still has its original gum, you might see it selling for around $1 to $3, depending on the specific catalog number. However, the real value lies in the errors and rare varieties. For example, a 9-pence Machen with a significant perforation error or a missing phosphor band can fetch between $20 and $50 on platforms like eBay or at specialized stamp auctions.
Next up, the King George VI half-penny green stamp. This iconic stamp, part of the definitive series issued during a period of immense global change, remains a staple for collectors around the world. In this video, we will explore why this small piece of paper continues to capture the imagination of hobbyists and what you can expect to pay or receive for it in today's market, with all values provided in US dollars. The King George VI half-penny green stamp was first introduced in 1937, shortly after the king's accession to the throne following the abdication of his brother. The design itself is a masterpiece of simplicity and elegance, featuring the left-facing profile of the king based on a photograph by Dorothy Wilding. This particular green shade was part of the original dark color series, which was later modified to a paler green in 1941 due to wartime ink shortages. These historical nuances are what make the stamp so special, as they serve as a direct link to the challenges and triumphs of the United Kingdom during the mid-20th century. When we look at the market value in today's economy, it is important to distinguish between the different conditions and varieties that exist. For a standard used version of the 1937 dark green or the 1941 pale green half-penny stamp, the value is generally quite modest, often ranging from $1 to $200. Because millions of these stamps were produced for daily postage, they're common in most bulk collections. However, if you have an unmounted mint specimen, one that has never been used and still has its original gum, the value can increase to between $250 and $500, depending on its freshness and centering. The real excitement for collectors of Stamps Old World UK comes from the rare varieties and errors. For instance, stamps with an inverted watermark, where the crown and royal cipher are printed upside down, are significantly more valuable. A used half-penny green with an inverted watermark can fetch anywhere from $300 to $600, while a pristine mint version can reach even higher prices at auction.
Additionally, stamps found on original envelopes, known as covers, especially those with interesting postal markings or first-day cancellations, can command prices between $650 and $770 from specialists who study postal history.
Next up, the most prestigious and iconic stamps in British philately. We are talking about the famous 1884 Queen Victoria £1 brown lilac stamp. This particular issue is a heavyweight in the world of collecting and is often referred to by experts as the long £1 because of its unique horizontal format. If you have ever seen this masterpiece in person, you know that its ornate design and intricate surface printing by Thomas de la Rue make it a true work of art that captures the grandeur of the Victorian era. The 1884 £1 brown lilac, catalogued as Stanley Gibbons No. 185, was issued with the 3 crowns watermark. It was only in circulation for a very short period of time because the post office soon decided to change the color of high-value stamps to green to prevent people from cleaning off cancellations. This short lifespan is exactly what makes the brown lilac so incredibly rare today. Most of these stamps were used for heavy parcels or internal telegrams and were often destroyed or heavily canceled. Finding one in pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, and that is why the market value has skyrocketed over the decades. Let's talk about the market value in today's currency, specifically in US dollars. The value of this stamp depends entirely on its condition. If you have a fine used copy with a clear postmark, the current market price typically ranges between $600 and $1,000. However, if the stamp is in exceptional used condition with light cancellations and perfect perforations, it can easily reach $1,500 at auction. For those lucky enough to find an unused or mint example with original gum, we are looking at a completely different level of wealth. A high-quality mint specimen is currently valued in the Stanley Gibbons catalog at over $40,000, and at major auctions, exceptionally rare examples have been known to sell for even more.
Next up, the King George V halfpenny green stamp. This humble green definitive was a workhorse of the British postal system for over 2 decades, but as any seasoned collector knows, not all halfpenny greens are created equal. Depending on the watermark, the die type, and the specific printing, a stamp that looks like a common penny filler could actually be a rare variety worth a significant amount to the right buyer. The stamp you see on your screen features the iconic profile of King George V, often referred to as the Collector King because of his own legendary passion for philately. First issued in 1911 and continuing through various iterations until the mid-1930s, this design replaced the short-lived and much criticized Downy Head series. The halfpenny value was essential for postcards and printed matter, making it one of the most widely circulated stamps of the era. The design is rich with symbolic details, including the Tudor crown at the top and the majestic dolphins flanking the central portrait, signifying Britain's naval dominance and global reach during the early 20th century. When we talk about market value in today's economy, it is important to remember that condition is everything. For a standard used copy with a heavy cancellation and average perforations, you're looking at a very modest value, often less than 50 cents. These are perfect for those just starting out or for completing a basic representative collection. However, the market shifts significantly when we move into mint condition. A fine, unmounted mint example of the common block cipher watermark typically sells for between $2 and $5. If you happen to have a stamp from the earlier royal cipher period in pristine condition, that price can easily climb to $10 or $15. The real excitement in the market comes from the rare varieties and errors. Philatelists pay close attention to the watermarks. For instance, if you find a King George V halfpenny green with an inverted watermark where the crown and cipher are upside down, the value jumps immediately. These varieties can fetch anywhere from $20 to $60, depending on the specific issue. Even more valuable are the rare multiple cipher watermarks or specific shades like the bright yellow-green with a deep myrtle green.
In some specialized auctions, rare blocks or stamps with unique plate flaws have been known to sell for over $100, proving that there is still a lot of gold to be found in these green fields. As we look at the trends for 2025, the market for King George V era stamps remains incredibly stable. Collectors appreciate the historical weight of the Great War era and the high quality of the typography used by printers like Harrison & Sons. Whether you're holding a stamp worth a few cents or a rare variety worth $50, you're holding a piece of British history. Make sure to check the back of your stamps for those watermarks and inspect the edges for any imperfections. You never know when a standard halfpenny green might turn out to be the highlight of your collection.
Next up, the most iconic pieces of British postal history, the King George V 1 penny red. Whether you found one in an old family album or you were looking to start a collection, understanding the true market value of these stamps in today's economy is essential. In this video, we will break down the history, the key varieties that determine the price, and exactly what these stamps are worth in US dollars in the current market. The reign of King George V from 1910 to 1936 is often called the golden era of British philately. As a passionate collector himself, the king took a personal interest in the design of his stamps. The 1 penny red was the workhorse of the British postal system, used for millions of letters every single day. Because so many were printed, you might find dozens of them in a single collection. However, not all penny reds are created equal. The value of a single stamp can range from just a few cents to thousands of dollars, depending on very specific details that only a keen eye can spot. The first thing you need to identify is the design type. There are two main versions of the King George V 1 penny red. The first is known as the Downey head, named after the photographers W. and D. Downey. This design features the king in a 3/4 profile and was only in use for about a year because the public, and the king himself, generally disliked it. Because of its short life, certain Downey head varieties are quite sought after. The second, more common version is the profile head, which shows the king's side profile. This design was used for over 20 years and exists in a staggering number of shades and watermark variations. When it comes to market value in today's US dollars, the condition is the most significant factor. For a standard used profile head stamp with a common cancellation, the market value is typically very low, often between 10 cents and $1. These are usually sold in bulk packets to collectors just starting out. However, if the stamp is in mint, never hinged condition, the price jumps significantly. A high-quality mint example of a standard penny red can easily fetch between $5 and $15. If the stamp has a rare shade, such as a deep scarlet or a brownish rose, that value can climb into the $50 to $100 range. Rarity in the King George V era often comes down to watermarks and perforations. For example, if you find a 1 penny red with an inverted watermark, meaning the crown and cipher on the back are upside down, you are looking at a much more valuable item. In today's market, these varieties can sell for anywhere from $20 to over $200, depending on the centering and the freshness of the paper. There were also rare die varieties. For instance, the Die 2 versions of certain early issues are much scarcer than Die 1, with some specialized examples valued at over $500 in professional auctions. One of the most exciting areas for collectors is the seahorse high values, but even within the 1 penny reds, there are control numbers at the bottom of the sheets that add massive value. If you have a block of stamps with the original margin showing a letter and number code like A11 or B13, you could be holding something worth $60 to $100 or more. For the ultimate rarities, such as specialized trials or stamps with major printing errors, prices in US dollars can reach into the thousands. Recent sales have shown that collectors are willing to pay a premium for stamps with certificates of authenticity from organizations like the Royal Philatelic Society. To get the best price for your stamps, you must look at the perforations and the centering. A stamp that is perfectly centered with all its teeth intact will always command a higher price than one that is torn or heavily smudged by a messy ink cancel. In today's global market, buyers prefer lightly canceled copies where the king's face is still clearly visible. If you are selling, remember that auction houses and online marketplaces like eBay are great places to check recent sold listings to see what people are actually paying in real time. Next out, the King George V 2-pence orange stamp. This particular design, known as the Royal Cipher or Profile Head issue, was first introduced in 1912 and remained a staple of the British postal system for over a decade. The stamp features the profile of King George V facing left, surrounded by a highly detailed ornamental frame that includes a crown at the top and the words "Postage and Revenue" on a ribbon below the portrait. Because these were printed in the millions to handle everyday mail, they're a common sight in many old collections, but that does not mean they lack value or historical interest. The market value of this stamp in today's world depends heavily on its specific subtype and condition. For a standard used copy, like the one you might find in an old envelope or a beginner's album, the value typically ranges from 50 cents to $3. However, if the stamp is in mint, never hinged condition, meaning the original gum on the back is perfectly intact and has never been touched by a stamp hinge, the price can jump significantly to between $10 and $25. Collectors pay a premium for fresh-looking stamps with vibrant orange color and well-centered perforations. What makes the King George V 2-pence orange truly exciting for specialists are the rare variations and errors that can be worth a lot more. For instance, there were two distinct versions of this stamp known as Die 1 and Die 2. You can tell them apart by looking at the lion in the shading lines above the king's head. Furthermore, stamps with a sideways or inverted watermark are much harder to find and can sell for $50 or even more at auction. There is even a rare, intense bright orange shade that specialized catalogs list for over $1,000 in pristine condition. If you were looking at your own collection and see this orange 2-pence stamp, the first thing you should check is the back. Hold it up to a light or use a watermark detector to see if the crown and cipher symbols are pointing the wrong way or turned on their side. Next, look at the edges to ensure none of the teeth or perforations are missing. Even though most of these stamps are affordable pieces of history, finding a rare error or a perfect mint copy is the dream of every collector. Thank you for joining us on Stamps Old World UK as we explore the hidden treasures of the past.